Welcome in, everybody, to a very special video, something I've had cooking up here for a few weeks. Super excited to bring this to you. We're going to dip into the realm of imagination a little bit and the realm of what ifs and talk about what if the NFL brought in an expansion team similar to what the NHL did, where you have a certain number of players that each team can protect, and you get one, in this case, from every team. What might the new team look like? And in the case of this really scenario, how might that team perform? And that is the other side of this. I will be taking the team that we build in this experiment to Madden, where we're gonna do a little expansion team rebuild based on this. I cannot wait for it. Now, that rebuild is going to be on my gaming channel, TFG Plays, so head right down to the description, follow that link to the channel, and make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're following the channel, and you can see this entire series play out. By the time this video posts, by the time you've watched it, I will have episode 1 up on that channel, kicking off the expansion team rebuild. So, again, TFG Plays, go check it out, go follow the Madden side of things. But we're going to have some fun here in this video because this isn't just a Madden experiment. This is something that, like I said, another professional sports league has done. It's something I think the NFL would consider, a scenario where each team loses one player. You can protect your biggest names, your best assets, but for the money, for the entertainment, open up a new team. And yeah, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is far from the most unrealistic experiment. So we're going to be talking in this video especially about the decision-making process for all 32 teams. What players would they protect in this scenario? Who would they least want to lose? And then the fantasy draft, the expansion draft aspect of it, where we're going to build the team. So really excited here. I do need to credit Trevor Sikkema, Connor Rogers of the PFF NFL Stock Exchange podcast. They did this concept over the summer. I listened to their podcast. It's phenomenal. Really entertaining to hear their process on this. I reached out to Trevor, who came on for the Bucs Deep Dive. Wanted to make sure he was cool if I, basically took their concept and expanded upon it, and he gave me the go-ahead. So really excited for this. Please do hit that like button if you enjoy, and let's get started. So first things first is, what's our team? What are we going to look like? And we're going to be the Houston Oilers. We're bringing them back. Houston is the 4th largest, highest populated city in the U.S., and they don't exactly have a football team that they're ecstatic about. So I think bringing another team to Houston is reasonable, especially in a state of Texas where they want great football. I will fully admit that I wanted to do the Austin Oilers, but because we are taking this to Madden, I was limited by
Thanks,
who.
EA.
So I couldn't create the Austin Oilers. In an expansion situation, I could create the Houston Oilers. So that's another reason we're doing Houston, but I did want to put it in Texas because everyone's moving to Texas right now. Austin, Texas especially. I wanted to do that because I've been to Austin. I love Austin. And I feel like one thing they're missing is a big pro sports team. So if you want to imagine the Austin Oilers here, totally fine by me. But we're going to be in Texas either way. Our owner is going to be Elon Musk, who is a billionaire, obviously. It's a fun name to have as our owner, staying in Texas where he has moved and has got the whole SpaceX set up down there. So we are going to be the Houston Oilers, owned by Elon Musk. As far as our staff, I want to talk about what our staff's going to be because that might dictate some of our personnel decisions. I'm just abiding by the hiring rules around the league. And as far as our timeline goes, this is going to be a team that started over the offseason, actually after the NFL draft. So you got to rewind the clock a little bit. But abiding by the NFL's hiring rules, looking around at the coordinators that I would want. I wanted a young coach, someone that could relate to a potentially younger roster because I do foresee, trying to build youth and build through the trenches and not expect to win a Super Bowl right away with this team. So I wanted to go with a relatable young coach and a really highly qualified coach, someone that I think will be a head coach in the NFL very soon. And my selection is DeMeco Ryans for the 49ers, their defensive coordinator. Still, I think only 40 years old. I think has done such a great job with that defense. Just check out my Niners deep dive if you want to see me rave about DeMeco Ryans and that staff. But not a huge surprise that I will be bringing over their defensive line coach with him in Chris Kochurik to be our defensive coordinator. I think I butchered that name, but we are going for that attacking 4-3 front that DeMeco has set up in San Francisco. For my offensive coordinator, we're going to be pulling a name that has disappeared slightly from the vision of most people, but I think a very capable offensive coordinator that is someone that, if we're going defensive head coach, we're going to bring in all these minds. I wanted someone with a lot of experience, someone that could really run any sort of scheme. And I looked around, and one guy that really stood out to me is Greg Olsen, assistant for the Rams right now, but stepped up in place of John Gruden when John Gruden stepped down as the Raiders offensive coordinator last year. I thought did a really good job. Someone that I just think is a very capable mind, has done good work wherever he's been. And Sean McVay, it's been noted that he's got a list of names around the league of guys that he respects and thinks would be good hires if they ever became available when he inevitably loses his guys. And Greg Olsen obviously was on his list. The Rams hire him. He's just hanging out as an assistant, and we're going to bring him in as our offensive coordinators. So the staff is going to be DeMeco Ryans, Greg Olsen, and Chris Kochurik. And I think that's everything as far as setup. Every team gets to protect 12 players. So in the Stock Exchange podcast, I think they did 6 or maybe 4 on each side of the ball. I can't remember exactly what they did, but it was a little bit less than I'm doing. So the teams are going to be able to protect a little bit more, which is going to make this even more difficult for us. And we get 1 player from each team for balance. And then when we bring this to Madden, I will fill out the depth and stuff, and you'll see what the complete team looks like. But first things first, I need to go through every team and talk about their process on who they would be protecting here. So let's pull up the spreadsheet and get on with it. So starting in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills, obviously Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, easy decisions. Deion Dawkins want to keep that left tackle. Ed Oliver kind of speaks for himself, still ascending, pretty easy choice. I did struggle with Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano. I went with the youth. I went with the higher upside guy there. Really wanted to keep them both, but it just, looking at this list, it wasn't possible. Greg Rousseau, can't lose him. First round pick last year, trending up. Tre'Davious White, obviously. Micah Hyde, and I ended up keeping Jordan Poyer too. I looked at this and felt like that duo and what they want to accomplish with this team, the way those two guys play off each other is so invaluable, and I didn't want to mess with that. Kyer Elam, first round pick this year. Von Miller, huge part of what they want to accomplish this year. The last guy I struggled with was Mitch Morse. I just felt like he would be the most impactful loss, losing their center. They've done such a good job to establish the continuity on the O-line. That was a tough call, but I did go with Mitch Morse. And this team they're going to lose a tough player. They got Matt Milano available, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox. And maybe after what we've seen from Gabe Davis, that makes it even harder. But the Bills are going to have to lose a good player, unfortunately. Then the New York Jets, a lot of young players here. Obviously keeping Zach Wilson. I did want to keep Breece Hall just because I think he has a chance to be one of the best backs in the league. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, obviously. I did keep DJ Reed. I originally had Mekhi Becton here, but after another injury, I don't think they're really afraid of losing him. So I did flip that with DJ Reed. Elijah Vera Tucker, want to keep him. Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, first round pick this year. John Franklin Myers, talked about on the podcast yesterday. He might be the best defensive player they have. They gave Laken Tomlinson a lot of money to play up front for that O-line. And then I did go with George Fant just because I want to make sure they have some offensive tackles in there. So you are also, it's another team with a lot of depth. They're going to lose somebody. Corey Davis sitting there. You got Connor McGovern, Jordan Whitehead, a nice safety, Carl Lawson, a good pass rusher. Like, you're going to lose someone there, but I really felt like we kept the core of who this team wants to be. Then you've got the Dolphins, and some obvious ones here. Obviously, Waddle, Hill, you don't want to lose them. Teron Armstead, such a big piece of fixing that O-line. I just don't think they'd let Tua be one of their... It's just such a bad look if you don't protect him. They've invested so much in convincing the team and themselves that he's the quarterback. Honestly, if this were fully my decision, I'd probably just risk losing him. If we got to go with Teddy Bridgewater and find a new guy next year, fine. I don't think an expansion team wants to kickstart their organization with Tua, so you could probably use that to protect a better player, but to keep things realistic, I think they would protect Tua. Then there were some obvious choices on the defense, like Jalen Phillips, Emmanuel Ogbah, Christian Wilkins, Jerome Baker, Howard, Byron Jones, Javon Holland. Those are the faces of that defense. Don't want to lose any of those guys. The one guy that I did kind of struggle with here is Mike Gesicki. I ended up keeping him over Connor Williams. Williams has looked good. I did prep this 2 weeks ago, so if I end up flipping these and changing my mind on the fly here, we'll see. Honestly, I think based on the modern approach to this team, I would actually flip this and protect Connor Williams there. So there you go. Robert Hunt as well, but I think Connor Williams actually fits their scheme really well and looks like he's trending up. So I think you actually protect Connor Williams over Mike Gesicki. I think that makes sense. Then the Patriots. A lot of different players here. You're obviously keeping Mac Jones, Cole Strange, first-round pick. Really, the O-line in general. I wanted to keep these guys all intact. That's one of the best things they have going for them, so why mess with it? They already messed with it enough. So I'd keep them. Barmore, Judon, Duggar, those are no-brainers. I think Hunter Henry is someone Mac Jones really trusts, so I wouldn't want to lose him. Then I ended up keeping, they don't have a lot of great cover players, and they still want to compete. I would keep Devin McCourty. I'd be afraid of the expansion team kind of poaching him as a leader of their defense. And I feel like Jonathan Jones is just a guy in that secondary that they can't afford to lose. So, you're letting a lot of guys be open to be taken, but as the guy, among the guys that we're leaving available, I don't think any of them are integral parts of that team. Josh Uche has promise, but hasn't guaranteed it. Jonnu Smith is tight end 2 there. You got Kendrick Bourne, Aguilar, all those receivers, the running backs. I think that's the right group for the Patriots. Okay, the Ravens, this was really tough. This is one of the deeper rosters in the league, so I really struggled with this one. Obviously, Lamar, Bateman, Andrews, Linderbaum, Owe, Ojabo. I wanted to keep that secondary intact, so Marcus Peters, Marcus Williams, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton. Those were all no-brainers, along with Ronnie Stanley. None of those guys you want to lose. And then I looked at this and I was like, man, the expansion team might steal Justin Tucker from us. He's that good. They have some younger guys that they've drafted here, and, maybe you flip this and keep Madubuike after he looked really good in the opener. But I'm going to keep Justin Tucker there. I mean, he is so freaking good. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's the one kicker that you can truly trust to make it from anywhere. I think the expansion team might steal him from you based on that list of remaining players. So I'm actually going to protect Justin Tucker. He's the only kicker that we protected here, I think. Then we are into the AFC North. Bengals, we got Burrow, Mixon, Higgins, Chase, franchise left tackle, and Jonah Williams. Some of these D linemen, Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader is a freaking underrated monster. First round pick in Daxton Hill, Chidobe Awuzie, who was a breakout star last year. Lyle Collins to hopefully continue that offensive line growth. And then Jesse Bates was a tough one because I know they're not fully committed to him, but I think that's too much value to just leave out there, and the expansion team would certainly take him. So the tough call was Tyler Boyd. Do you keep him over Von Bell or BJ Hill, Alex Kappa at guard? It's tough, but I feel like having that trifecta at wide receiver is underrated for them. And their wide receiver depth would be so bad if they let Tyler Boyd go. So we're going to go with Boyd. Tough call there, being probably the hardest decision to make. Okay, we got Cleveland. I'm going to keep Deshaun Watson, even despite all the crap. Amari Cooper, Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. Don't want to mess with that O-line. That's the best thing they got going for them outside of having Myles Garrett. This one was honestly really easy down the board. The only guy that I really struggled with was David Njoku versus John Johnson, Grant Delpit. That last spot was tough. I did feel like their playmakers would be in a really tough spot if they let Njoku go. They just gave him a contract extension as well. By the way, if a player gets poached in this situation, the new team inherits the full contract. So the new team has to stay under the cap, and the old team doesn't take any sort of penalty for the player that's left. But yeah, I felt like going with Njoku because he's like their second best playmaker at the moment, and they just paid him to be a big part of that scheme that they run. So tough call there. Browns are going to lose a good player in either Hunt, John Johnson, Grant Delpit. Pittsburgh Steelers keeping Kenny Pickett, first round pick, Najee Harris. Deontay Johnson gets the contract extension, George Pickens. I'm going to keep Chase Claypool. I feel like he just has so much promise if the quarterback room ever figures itself out there. Pat Freiermuth. That's kind of the identity of the offense with those guys. Don't want to mess with that. We are going to let the O-line hit the market. All of them other than James Daniels, who I think is the best guy they have. Defensively, I am going to keep Cam Hayward despite his age. After losing Tuitt up front, that D-line would be depleted pretty quickly if they let him go. These edge rushers are awesome, so keeping TJ Watt and Highsmith. Minka, obviously. I'm glad 2 weeks ago that I had Cameron Sutton on here. This was before that incredible Week 1 game, and definitely not letting him go now. I still believe Cam Sutton is a stud and is going to ascend to be one of the best slot corners in the NFL. And then keeping James Daniels just because that O-line is such a mess. So both linebackers, that plays into the strategy here. You let them both potentially be taken, and you still have one guy there. And all these other offensive linemen, Kevin Dotson, Okorafor, also going to be on the market. All right, AFC South. Houston Texans was tough, but it was also kind of easy, like, honestly, when you really think about it, because they had about 12 pieces worth keeping, and the rest of the guys was kind of like whatever. So keeping a lot of these linemen, Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green. I think Titus Howard still has potential, so we kept him. And then a lot of defensive guys, so Jonathan Grenard, Malik Collins, who's an underrated player for them. Oh, shoot. We got Ross Blacklock on here. So I think let's flip this and let's protect. I think you protect Christian Harris here. Blacklock is no longer on the team. He's on the Vikings now. I think we flipped that, and let's just protect the young third-round pick, Christian Harris. He's got a ton of speed. So you got that group. I lost where I was, but obviously you're keeping Stingley, Petrie, Mills is fascinating enough to keep, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins. One guy not listed here would be John Mechie. As tough as it is, I think with the cancer situation, I think you probably, you know what? Let's slide Mechie in there instead of Christian Harris, for sure. That makes more sense. All right, that's fixed. Indianapolis, I'm keeping Matt Ryan. They have expectations to win this year. He would get plucked, I think, immediately. JT, Shaq Leonard, Michael Pittman, Kenny Moore, Quentin Nelson, Stephon Gilmore I did want to keep because that secondary is so bad without him. Keeping those guys on the O-line, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, and then keeping that D-line intact as well. Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, and Yannick Ngakoue. So you're risking losing some good pieces there. Nyheim Hines, Julian Blackman, but nothing terrible, honestly, that you're truly risking there. Like, you're keeping the core intact for the most part. Some of those young pieces, Alec Pearson, Bernard Raymond, would suck to lose, but you're probably losing either Hines or Julian Blackman there. Maybe Grover Stewart. Then we got Jacksonville. I also want to remind, or at least let you guys know, that this spreadsheet is going to be available. I'm also going to put that in the description below. So if you want to copy it into your own spreadsheet and build your own expansion teams, you will have the tools to do that down below. Okay, the Jags, keeping Trevor Lawrence, obviously, keeping Travis Etienne. I did keep him over James Robinson, even though at this point in time, James Robinson looks pretty good, but I think Etienne's the higher upside, former first-round pick. You keep him. I actually protected Walker Little over Jawan Taylor. I think his upside's better. This is a personal choice. They're playing Jawan Taylor, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think Walker Little is just the higher upside player there. Cam Robinson, left tackle, keeping Brandon Sheriff, who they paid, keeping the number 1 pick, Trayvon Walker, keeping some of these free agent signings, Folorenzo Fadukasi up front. I am going to let, though, Foye Oluokun be exposed here and go with Devin Lloyd instead. I think, you spend the first-round pick on him. Tough call there. The Jags actually had a pretty good roster here, so it got tough towards the bottom of this. Keeping Josh Allen, keeping Tyson Campbell, and I protected Shaq Griffin, but yeah, I think that's right. I think you protect the corner. I think that's right. And then Andre Sisco at safety, really promising young players. So that's the list. It's a really tough team. Like, would hate to lose James Robinson, Oluokun. Christian Kirk, it's like, I don't think a team wants that contract, even if they paid him all that money. If someone takes that off your hand, like, I think you'll live to see another day. And then, yeah, tough calls, really. Chad Moom is an interesting prospect. Darius Williams, they just paid. So the Jags are going to lose a talented player there for sure. Okay, then the Titans, and I already see something here that I think I'm going to switch. I think I'm going to switch Robert Woods for Malik Willis. I think from what we saw from the preseason, they wouldn't want to risk an expansion team taking Malik Willis. So I'm going to flip that. But other than that, I think pretty straightforward with the Titans, keeping the core of that defense intact. Harold Landry, despite the injury, still want to keep him. Jeffrey Simmons, obviously. Fulton, not the best week 1, but I still like Christian Fulton. Caleb Farley, still hope you can get something from him. Kevin Byard, Amani Hooker, also keeping Roger McCreary, who they spent a first-round pick on. And then offensively, you're keeping both quarterbacks. Derrick Henry, of course. Taylor Lewan, their left tackle. The one offensive lineman we're keeping in this situation. And, Malik Willis. So you're leaving some good players out there, but nothing that's like game-changing if you lose them. Danico Autry, Zach Cunningham, a good player. Robert Woods wouldn't be fun to lose, but I think they could handle it. Okay, on to the AFC. Sorry, did that get off the screen? I don't know. Hopefully you guys could see the Bills when I was doing that, but there it is in case it wasn't on there. There we go. Let me fix that. Okay. AFC West. So Denver keeping Russ, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Bowles. Really the integrity of that offense. And then a lot of players on defense, actually. So Draymond Jones, keeping DJ Jones as well. So those defensive tackles, they're so thin there. I don't think they want to lose those guys. Keeping the edge guys, Chubb and Gregory, Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, K'Wan Williams. Such a good signing. I'm just so high on K'Wan Williams. I didn't want to lose him. Even keeping him over Ronald Darby. And then keeping Javonte Williams, who's just so explosive, so high upside. And when you look at the guys left, Quinn Miners, KJ Hamler, Ronald Darby, there's some players there for sure. But it's a talented roster, right? I think we're keeping the right guys. Kansas City, this is another really talented team. So many stars on this team. So some tough calls, but you're keeping Pat. I think you're keeping those offensive linemen, at least the really good ones. Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. I'm actually not keeping Orlando Brown because they were prepared to start the season without him anyway. I think they're smart and know, you know what, we really shouldn't pay this guy all that much money. We've got way too many good players to keep here. Most teams would keep an Orlando Brown, but I just don't think they need to. They know they'll probably lose him, but I think you'd rather lose him than anyone else on this list. I think you could flip MVS for Orlando Brown, but they gave MVS a 3-year, $30 million contract, and as of this timeline, they really felt like they needed that speed element. So I'm going to keep MVS in there. Tough call, but yeah, I think that's the right thing to do, because I think long term they're going to lose Orlando Brown anyway, and they have a Joe Tooney who can step out and play left tackle for him. So tough call, but we'll go that route. George Karlaftis on the defense, first round pick. Obviously keeping Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, another first round pick. Justin Reed, safety / kickoff player, and you can't lose Travis Kelce. So definitely some tough calls. Losing MVS, risking Juju. I just think MVS brings that speed element that they want. I know we haven't seen it as of week 1, but it is tough. Rashad Fenton would be a tough guy to lose as well. Looking back on this, it's like, gosh, we don't even have Mecole Hardman listed in there. Man, I don't know. I think their depth after McDuffie and Sneed at corner is pretty rough. I think Fenton's actually more valuable than MVS. I'm actually going to keep Rashad Fenton here because they need those 3 corners for sure on that defense. So I think that's a tough call, but I'm actually going to flip that and risk losing MVS. I think an expansion team might not take MVS, though. That's another part of that. I think the Chiefs would probably be hurting the most if they lost Rashad Fenton out of that group. So let's go to Las Vegas. We're going to keep Carr. We're going to keep Colton Miller. Keeping Devontae, Renfro, Darren Waller. Pretty easy decisions. I am going to keep Josh Jacobs. I just think he's super talented. I know he's someone they have on the trade block, but they didn't have a lot of tough calls like a team like the Chiefs, so we're going to keep him. And then, funny that I had Trayvon Mullen as a tough call because they obviously didn't value him too high. But, yeah, we're keeping Merrick on the defense. We're keeping Max Crosby, Chandler Jones. I really like Divine Diablo. I didn't want to lose him. The Raiders weren't too tough. Keeping Rocky Sin, keeping Nate Hobbs. And, the guys that risk losing, Denzel Perriman, a good linebacker, but you could lose them. Dylan Parham, 3rd-round pick that they drafted. Like, they're not losing the most talented group there, so we can scratch Trayvon Mullen as an option for him, though. All right, Chargers. Honestly, this wasn't too bad. If you just go down the list here, pretty easy decisions like Herbert, Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, 1st-round pick, Corey Linsley, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, and Derwin James. And then the big guys you're losing, Nasir Adderley, Matt Filer, Kenneth Murray, Sebastian Joseph Day. Probably one of the easier ones right there for the Chargers. And there's your AFC. Then the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles was really tough. This is a loaded roster. So starting on the offense, you want A.J. Brown back, obviously. You want Devonta Smith back. You want to keep Jalen Hurts. I think he's shown too much for them to risk losing. You want to keep that O-line intact. So I would keep Jason Kelce because he's he's just so good now. You don't know when he's going to retire, but you would think that the team would enjoy bringing in a all-pro center like Jason Kelce. So I would keep him. I think he's so integral to the development of Cam Jurgens that I don't think you're at a huge risk of losing. So I think that makes sense. You keep Landon Dickerson, who's an awesome young guard. Lane Johnson, one of the best right tackles. Dallas Goedert's a stud tight end. Keeping Jordan Mailata. So offense heavy for the Eagles. Just so many stars on that side of the ball that they don't want to lose. But we are going to keep Jordan Davis. We're going to keep Darius Slay because their corner depth is not good. And he's also just really freaking good at cornerback. So I don't want to lose him. Josh Sweat, they've paid. He was productive last year. I think he's one of their best defensive players. And then Javon Hargrave, who's one of the best pass rushing D tackles. So exposing yourself to lose some tough players here. Fletcher Cox, Cam Jurgens could be an option for the team. Hassan Reddick, high-paid edge rusher. Milton Williams, high upside defensive tackle. Definitely some options there for the expansion team. Okay, Dallas wasn't too bad. Pretty self-explanatory. Dak, CD, Michael Lamb, keeping the good offensive linemen that you have. Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, first-round pick. Zach Martin. And then defensively, keeping DeMarcus Lawrence, keeping Micah Parsons, obviously. I do want to keep Trayvon Diggs. And then it was just like, it kind of got sloppy after that. Not a lot of great players on this team. So I wanted to keep Dalton Schultz. I think he's really good with Dak. I wanted to keep Osa. I think he's a really promising defensive tackle at a good week 1, so I'm glad I have him on here. And then Kelvin Joseph has just shown too much upside to risk losing him. So Dallas wasn't too bad. You're leaving Jaron Kearse out there, a good strong safety, some starting caliber corners in Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis, Tyler Biadasz, a starting caliber center, and Leighton Vander Esch. Not a tough one there for Dallas. All right, Washington, another relatively easy one. I felt like you're keeping the core of that offense. That offensive line is so sweet. So you're keeping McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, obviously, Charles Leno, Chase Roullier, Sam Cosmi, and then risking losing those guards, but there's your offensive keepers. I am going to keep Carson Wentz as well. I felt like once I selected the key defensive players, it made sense to keep him around. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and then I'm keeping the corners, William Jackson, Kendall Fuller. So not leaving a ton of great players out there. Cam Curl, a solid safety, but I think they could afford losing them. Cole Holcomb, Diami Brown, a talented receiver that isn't playing here. Pretty straightforward for Washington. The Giants was really easy. Just not even enough players, honestly, to be worried about it. Like, I'm keeping Kadarius Toney, so explosive, so much upside. Keeping both of the tackles, Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, Mark Glowinski, big free agent signing. Keeping those D linemen, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau. Good, talented core there. Don't want to lose them. Keeping Xavier McKinney, who looks really good at safety. And then I'm glad I kept Saquon. Good to see he's back. I did waiver on that at the time of recording this, but so good to see him back. And then I kept Daniel Jones. Felt like they owe it to themselves to not lose him and still compete this year. So keeping him. And then I picked Adoree Jackson. So risking the loss of Kenny Golladay, Wan'Dale Robinson, Aaron Robinson. Pretty safe route there for the Giants. Okay, NFC North now. We've got Green Bay. Obviously keeping Rodgers. Going to keep Christian Watson despite the week 1 drop. David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins. Keep those good offensive linemen you've got there. Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Devondre Campbell, all-pro linebacker. You're keeping your star corners, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes. Keeping those safeties, Adrian Amos. And then it got a little bit more iffy beyond that. I did want to keep Savage because they have no other safeties. This is a team that does want to win right now. If they didn't keep Savage, they have no answers. So even if Savage has been up and down, I didn't want to risk losing him. And then this 12th one was tough. Like, do you risk the team taking Jordan Love? Do you care that much if they do? Devontae Wyatt, a first-round pick. Quay Walker, also a first-round pick. Both your running backs here, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Rasul Douglas, who had such a good year for them. You got Preston Smith, really good edge player. A lot of tough calls there. And honestly, now that we've kind of not seen Devontae Wyatt be a day 1 impact, I might actually flip this and plug in Preston Smith. I think that would hurt them the most out of that group. They don't have a lot of edge depth, and they just gave him a contract extension. So I think I'm actually going to flip that and keep Preston Smith over Devontae Wyatt. Then we got Minnesota. You could even put Romeo Doubs on that list of tough calls, considering how much they're depending on him. Minnesota wasn't too bad. So, although, yeah, I don't think it was too bad. Some of the defensive tackles were tough calls to let them go. But keeping Kirk, keeping Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, keeping Brian O'Neill on the offense, keeping Dalvin Cook. I did keep Adam Thielen. I felt like the wide receiver depth is not very good there. He's definitely someone that the expansion team would be interested in bringing in as a star receiver. So those are the offensive keepers. And then defensively, keeping those veterans, Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks. Those guys are still just so good. Keeping Daniil Hunter, obviously, Zadarius Smith, and then those young defensive backs, Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth. So, yeah, it's a pretty deep team. So they're going to let some offensive line options be available with Garrett Bradbury, Ezra Cleveland. You've got Cam Dantzler in the secondary. A couple of defensive tackles there, Harrison Phillips, Dalvin Tomlinson. Yeah, not the easiest team, really, with Minnesota. Then Detroit, the offense, I wanted to keep the firepower that they have. It's mostly offense for Detroit, honestly. You're keeping the receivers, Shark, Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, keeping most of these offensive linemen, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell. I did want to make sure on the defense I kept the important players. So Aiden Hutchinson, Jeff Okudah, Amani Oruwariye, and Aleem McNeil are all kind of their only hopes on defense. You know, I wanted to get Jonah Jackson in there, but I don't know who I would necessarily replace Jonah Jackson with. Maybe Amani Oruwariye, but man, you're already hurting at corner, and he's a good player. I would hate to lose him and have no corners. So I am going to put Jonah Jackson out there. Tough to lose a good offensive lineman, but with the tackles, with the center, they have good coaches. I think they can fill in the guard. I wanted to keep Jared Goff, and I wanted to keep TJ Hawkinson as well. So, yeah, Jonah Jackson was a tough call. DeAndre Swift was a tough call, but his contract's looming. Even better players, Romeo Okwara, Tracy Walker, Josh Pascal, a second-round pick. They've got some interesting players available for the expansion team. Then Chicago, this one was similar to some of these bad teams. Like, really not any tough calls at all. Taquan Graham is my only tough call. So we're keeping Fields, we're keeping Cody Whitehair. I am keeping Tevin Jenkins. Keeping Darnell Mooney, obviously. Robert Quinn, Roquan Smith, Jalen Johnson, Brisker, Gordon, Eddie Jackson. And then it was like, all right, I guess I'll keep David Montgomery and Travis Gibson. Not a deep enough roster to be too worried here. The Bears were pretty simple. And not a lot of great players out there for the expansion team to pick from. Okay, the Falcons. Interesting one with the quarterback situation. I did end up keeping Ritter over Mariota. I felt like I didn't need to keep them both. If one of them got plucked, I'll just start the other. And I wanted to go with Ritter just because there's the what-if factor there. What if he is a steal in the third round? But beyond that, keeping Drake London, obviously, Kyle Pitts, obviously, keeping Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom on that O-line. Grady Jarrett on the defense, keeping the young players that they've invested in, Arnold Ebiketie, AJ Terrell, Richie Grant, Troy Anderson, Michael Walker, an interesting linebacker, and then, Calvin Ridley is still technically on this team. Wanted to protect him. So not a ton of tough calls. Cordarrelle, I think you're going to survive if they take him. Jalen Hawkins looks like a solid safety. You got Young-Ho Koo. Mariota's, another name you can put on there, of course. But, I didn't think it was necessary to protect both quarterbacks there. All right, New Orleans. I am going to protect Jameis. I think they believe in him. They gave him a decent contract. Going to protect the big-name offensive guys. Kamara, Thomas, Olave, Trevor Penning, first-round pick. Eric McCoy, they just gave him a contract extension, so glad we're protecting him. Ryan Ramczyk. Don't want to lose the good offensive linemen that they have. Defensively, this team was really tough. This was a team that I sat here and played around with these names. I ended up with this list, and I think this is the one I'm going to go with. I do want to keep Marcus Davenport over Cam Jordan, actually. I wanted to keep Cam Jordan. I'm afraid he's going to get plucked, but this team has Davenport, who I think they will want to pay soon. They have Peyton Turner, who was a first-round pick last year. They have some other pieces on that D-line. I wanted to keep Davenport because of the upside, because he's young. I wanted to keep Paulson Adebo. I felt like he's a young corner with a ton of upside, and especially with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson now, he has a bright future for New Orleans. I would hate to lose him. Marshawn Lattimore, obviously. Tyrann Mathieu, I think they want to keep. And then I really was between Demario Davis and Cam Jordan. And I went with Demario Davis there. I feel like he's more of an integral part of that defense. I think they have more depth on the edge. And Cam Jordan, I think, has actually shown that he's descending, whereas Demario Davis, I think, is still playing at that high level. Saints were a tough team, man. They're gonna lose a good player here, but I think I'm gonna stand by the list. I would be worried about losing any of these guys here for your season's sake. And I'm worried about losing, it's just a tough team. There's so much talent on this team. And I just want to double check this and make sure it's the right call, but I think it is. I think we got it right. Adebo's the one that's like, do you risk losing him? Do you protect Cam Jordan instead of Adebo? If you let him go, it's tough, dude. I'm really, really struggling with this one. They already traded away Gardner Johnson. Roby's not getting any younger. I like Adebo too much, man. I know he's a third-round pick, but I think he can really play. So I'm gonna keep it. Okay, Carolina, not too terrible of a one. I didn't have Baker on there. I just felt like that was a guy that, they already have options, although they're injured. That might actually change this, to be honest. When I did this, they still could have turned to Sam Darnold. They still could have turned to Matt Corral. Would I flip anybody here? I think... Oh, Bozeman's not even starting. All right, that's pretty simple. Let's flip that. Bozeman's not even starting for them, so we won't protect Bozeman. Yeah, we'll put Baker on the list. But yeah, McCaffrey, Ikem Ekwonu, Austin Corbett, who they paid, Taylor Moton. Don't want to mess with that O-line. DJ Moore, Brian Burns, Derek Brown. Going to keep Shaq Thompson. I think he's really good. Dante Jackson, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, and Baker. Pretty straightforward there for the Panthers for a list of 12. Okay, Tampa Bay. This is a tough one. Keeping Tom Brady at 46 years old. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Don't want to lose those guys. Got to keep Donovan Smith. We saw what that O-line looked like when he went down. Not great. Gonna keep Shaq Mason. I think you got to have something proven on the O-line there on the inside. Keeping Tristan Wirfs. And then defensively, Vita Vea. I have Devin White here because he's young. He's so important as a blitzer in that scheme. We'll revisit that. I got Shaq Barrett, Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield, Jamel Dean. Got to keep those guys. Levante David's old, dude. He's really old. Ugh, this is so hard. Man, given their window, I think you have to flip this. I think David is more important to this team than Devin White right now. The future Bucks might regret this, but I don't know how much the future Bucks care. I think you got to keep Levante David over Devin White. And you've got some good options there for the expansion team between White, Murphy Bunting, Joe Tryon. It's an incredible roster. You knew it was going to be tough, but I think that would be what they do and makes sense. Okay, Seattle, pretty easy one with the offense at least. DK, Lockett, Cross, Abraham Lucas. I'm going to keep Damian Lewis even though he tore his ACL. Yeah, I think that's the right call. Noah Fant, want to keep him. I love Poona Ford, man. I just was so impressed watching this team back. I think he's the heart and soul of that D-line, and I would hate to lose him for a team that's trying to be competitive. Jordan Brooks, Quandre Diggs, Kenneth Walker, I did want to keep. Spent a high pick on him. I think Darrell Taylor you want to keep. He's the most promising of the young edge guys they have. And Jamal Adams, I just feel like would get poached. I know he just got hurt, so that throws another wrinkle in that. But I think Jamal Adams is underrated at this point. He is being paid here. Technically, he'd be freed from his contract if he did get poached. But do I feel good enough about Boye Mafe to risk losing Jamal Adams? I don't personally. I thought Mafe was a bit of a reach. I'm going to risk losing Mafe and keep Jamal Adams there. Okay, San Francisco. Keeping Trey Lance, Debo, Ayuk, Trent Williams. Mike McGlinchey's interesting on second look here. Definitely interesting. Might need to look at that again. But George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Armstead, Fred Warner, Shavarius Ward, really good player, underrated player that they paid. Jimmy Ward. You know, I think after what we saw, we got to put Hufanga on here as a tough call. And Ambry Thomas, I think, would not make this list now off of what we've seen. So I think they probably go Drake Jackson, who they spent a second-round pick on. They're really optimistic for him. I think you probably upgrade Drake Jackson. And if you lose Mosley, you can start Thomas. If you lose Thomas, you'll start Mosley, I think is the thinking there. McGlinchey, I still think he can play. He's still got a lot of upside. He's not great though, but I think you keep him. That O-line's already not looking great, so I think you keep McGlinchey. All right, Arizona. This one wasn't too bad. Kyler, DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, keeping DJ Humphries like their only good offensive lineman. Defensively, keeping Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, Byron Murphy. Gonna keep J.J. Watt because he's your only hope of any semblance of a pass rush this year. Trey McBride, who they spent a second-round pick on. So, gonna keep Rondale Moore. I think he's just so explosive. Not a ton of tough calls. I think Rodney Hudson is declining. I'm not terrified of losing him. He's a 34-year-old declining center. I'd rather lose him than anybody else on this list. Has a hard time staying healthy. Marcus Golden's fine, but replaceable. So I don't think I'd make any changes there. That's a good list. Zach Ertz is another one that would become available here. All right, Rams, keeping Stafford, keeping Kupp, Joe Noteboom, still going to hold, not going to overreact to week one. They paid him a lot of money. I'm going to hold faith that he can be a good player. Rob Havenstein, sorry, you probably can't see this. Let me move them over. Rob Havenstein, Allen Robinson, going to keep him even though he had a quiet week one. Aaron Donald, obviously. Greg Gaines, really good player. Want to keep him. Young guy. Jalen Ramsey, Tyler Higbee. This actually wasn't as hard as you'd think because they just don't have a lot of depth. David Edwards at guard. Leonard Floyd, Bobby Wagner. And really the only big names they're risking losing, Jordan Fuller. Wouldn't be ideal, but they have some safeties. David Long. I think they have some interesting corner depth. I don't know who I would flip him for. I think Higbee's just a better player there. And Ashawn Robinson, a decent player, but you still got Donald and Greg Gaines in there. So risk losing Jordan Fuller, Taylor Rapp, David Long, and Ashawn Robinson. So there you go. Those are the available options for us. Definitely some teams harder than others. Such an interesting experiment. I hope it was fun to follow along who we decided to keep. And again, this will all be available for you guys. I'm going to share this down below. If you want to create your own teams, send them to me, what you come up with. But let's get into our expansion draft. And such an interesting process here. I think I want to start by announcing our big name additions, like the guys that will attract ticket sales that you hope can be your captains and your locker room guys and your big players, your big contracts. So just prepping this a little bit, some of the big name guys that we're going to be poaching are going to be Cam Jordan from the New Orleans Saints. So we'll reveal him. Cam Jordan is our first pick. I think he's going to be our best player. Hopefully he can get a year or two of star pass rush from him. He can also play the Eric Armstead role in our defense where he'll play some 3 tech. He'll play off the edge a little bit. So really nice addition. I am going to take Rodney Hudson from the Arizona Cardinals to start the offensive line, to get a leader for the offensive line, even if it's just for 1 year. I like taking him. We're going to take Kenny Golladay from the Giants. They just didn't have a lot of great options. You could have gone Wan'Dale Robinson, but I felt like he was an obvious choice to fill in a wide receiver. He can be that big wide receiver on the outside. So we're going to take him. And then we're going to take Orlando Brown from the Chiefs, who we are willing to pay. I don't think the Chiefs are. We'll just pay him. It's not ideal, but we're going to have plenty of cap space to play with as an expansion team. So let's make Orlando Brown happy. I don't love doing it, but I'm going to give him that big 4-year, big, $23 million a year, like legitimate money. But O-line's going to be the hardest thing for us to set up. So to get a Rodney Hudson and an Orlando Brown, who's not perfect, but he is a good left tackle. There's not really any of those available in this situation. He's the guy. So it's a big cost on him. But given that we get all these guys for free, it's a unique situation. I think we can afford that contract that he's going to ask for. So we will fill those guys in with Orlando Brown at left tackle, Rodney Hudson. We're going to have Kenny Golladay as our X. And we're going to have Cam Jordan off the edge. Star players being filled in there. Now we need to pick our quarterback, was the next thing I wanted to focus on here. And I was really between Jordan Love, who's unproven, upside. If he's good, you got to pay him in a couple years. I'm really between him and Mariota. The other option would be Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm just not super interested in the Jimmy Garoppolo route, honestly. But, Mariota actually knows our system, which is a cool little thing here. We have Greg Olsen, who Mariota spent the last 2 years learning his system, familiar with him, looked good when he was our quarterback for the Raiders. And there's other players from the Packers that I think can be game changers for us. So I'm going to take Mariota because there's just not a lot of obvious calls from the Falcons. Right? Like you could take their kicker, Young Hoku, you could take Cordarrelle, but I think if we got to take it, I do want to end up with a quarterback here. I want to compete. I think we're going to have a competitive team. So I'm gonna go with Mariota at quarterback. It really wasn't much of a hesitation there. And then now it's more about strategy, like where do we want to build? I want to build through the offensive line, really. So, I prepped a lot of this, so I kind of know where to go. But we're going to start by grabbing Robert Hunt from the Dolphins. Now, I could pull a pump fake here and actually go with Mike Gesicki because I did change this, right? Based on some of the stuff has changed. So let me just think on the fly here. I did want Matt Filer from the Chargers. When I look at this list, it's no one spectacular. Adderley, Kenneth Murray, Sebastian Joseph Day. I think Matt Filer is a really good guard here that makes sense to plug in. He can also play right tackle if we need him, so he provides that flexibility. So we're going to take Matt Filer at right guard. And then I had Jawan Taylor from the Jags as the right tackle call here. Most teams protecting their tackles, and the ones that weren't protected aren't very good. It is tough because there's some good players here that the Jags are letting go. But I don't really want, especially because we're already overpaying Orlando Brown, I don't really want Christian Kirk on the books. The corners are solid. Like, Darius Williams would be a good option, especially for our system. Could get a young linebacker or get a Foye Oluokun. But I this could either be Walker Little or Jawan Taylor. But, I went through who we're protecting and the explanation for that. So Jawan Taylor's available. And I think he's still a good tackle prospect. So we're gonna put him at right tackle. Now, I'm going to hold off. I originally had Robert Hunt, but now that we're letting Gesicki be an option here. I'm sorry. I gotta delete this page. That was an extra page. We're letting Gesicki be an option here. So I think we will hold off on the Robert Hunt selection here, which I had pre-selected. So we'll hold off there with Miami. But we're taking Matt Filer from the Chargers and Jawan Taylor. So we still have a right guard pick up in the air. And that makes me want to revisit what I originally thought for Detroit. So I think this is a pretty easy decision for me. I had originally actually had Tracy Walker when I did this draft. I think I'm just going to flip that. I ended up taking 2 other safeties anyway. So I'm actually going to take Jonah Jackson from Detroit to be our other guard here. And I'm going to take Mike Gesicki as a tight end from the Miami Dolphins. So let's plug that in. Okay. So we got the O-line built. And then I'm going to just kind of go team by team and figure out which are our easiest kind of picks. So for the Jets, this one's not easy. Deciding between Matt Milano, Gabe Davis, Teron Johnson, Dawson Knox, really good players. I'm not quite ready to make that selection. I'm leaning towards Matt Milano there. But for the Jets, with this group here, I think I'd go Corey Davis out of this group. Carl Lawson's just such an injury risk. I do want a lot of talent up front. I really do. And I could have risked it with Mekhi Becton at right tackle and gone a different way with Jacksonville, but I'm just not comfortable there. We've already got our center. I like Jordan Whitehead, but there's not a lot of receivers on the board in this situation. So I think we go Corey Davis here. And we now have a couple of veteran receivers here to throw to. Different styles, too. Davis is a route runner. Galladay's a big-bodied guy. So we'll go there. The Patriots were tough. I think Jonnu stands out as the best player available. Damian Harris is a good back. He'd be an option after we also have Mike Gesicki. But I think I'm not afraid to go 2 tight ends here. The Raiders certainly weren't with Greg Olsen. I like Uche, but he doesn't really fit our 4-3 front. These wide receivers, I do like Tyquan Thornton, but the injury. Yeah, I feel like we go Jonnu here. He's just the best player available in this situation. So we're going to have now 2 tight ends on the team. Some good dynamic playmakers, some mismatch problems. The Ravens, not an easy pick on this group because you got an athletic linebacker in Patrick Queen and a couple of young defensive tackles that I really like. We've already filled out the O-line, so we don't need to go that route. And I love Charlie Kolar, but we just picked 2 tight ends. So I like Patrick Queen, but he's just so hit or miss. I think there's other linebackers available. I want to go with one of these D linemen. And based on what we've seen from Matabuike, and his flexibility, I think we got to go with Matabuike. And a big reason for that is I think I'm also going to take BJ Hill from the Bengals. I think he's clearly the best player available. I want more flexibility from my safeties than a Von Bell, who's more of just a true strong safety. So, yeah, we're going to go BJ Hill and Justin Matabuike, stealing a couple of big men out of the AFC North to give us a nice looking defensive line, honestly. You got Cam Jordan, Matabuike, BJ Hill. You can go base 3-4 with those guys if you wanted to. But BJ Hill, Justin Matabuike, not a bad looking front so far. Okay, Cleveland, this one is easy for me. I want John Johnson. I thought about Grant Delpit, thought about Greedy, but those guys are just so unproven. John Johnson's like a safety that is very good in this system. Split safety guy. He's going to be one of our better defensive players. Anytime a team has to let a stud like John Johnson go, I think you gotta pick him. So we're going to plug John Johnson in as one of our starting safeties from the Browns. Definitely thought about Kareem Hunt as a running back, but we'll get a running back in the building. Believe me. All right, the Steelers. I lean Devin Bush here to get our first linebacker. I like Miles Jack, but he's been just as hit or miss as Devin Bush. Bush is young, he's fast, he's gritty. Akella Witherspoon's tempting, but I don't think he's established enough to take him as a corner. We've got our O-line figured out. So, yeah, I think that's the call right there. I think we take Devin Bush off of the Steelers. So we got one linebacker in here. Devin Bush. One end on that. All right. Houston, pick your point, like whatever. None of these guys are going to make a big difference. I think Jerry Hughes is just the best player available here. You're kind of walking out with not a whole lot from Houston here anyway. Steven Nelson's fine. I could take him or leave him. We can revisit this, though. If we don't get another corner, we might just go with Steven Nelson. So we'll hold off on that. I think I lean towards Jerry Hughes, though, to be a starting edge and a good mentor up front. But, yeah, we'll hold off on that. The Colts, as much as I like Nyheim Hines, I think Julian Blackmon has just got such a bright future. And he's a guy that the Colts would love to keep here, but they couldn't. Alec Pierce is also interesting, but Bernard Raymond's interesting. But I just think Julian Blackmon's the guy. We've already gotten some good defensive tackles in here. So Julian Blackmon is going to be our pick from the Colts. So we got our safety duo with Julian Blackmon and John Johnson. Tennessee Titans. So some names here. We could go another veteran receiver, Robert Woods. He would make sense in the slot. But I think there's some other slot options that we might be able to get. I like Zach Cunningham. Danico Autry really fits our defensive line. Like, I just think the flexibility that we would have, they love big-bodied edge guys. The flexibility, we'd have with Autry as a 3-tech, as a 5-tech. I just think schematically, he's the most valuable player we can take from the Titans here. So I think that's actually the pick, is to poach Danico Autry off of the Titans. And we've got our starting 4 up front. We got some big boys, some pocket pushers. We're going to need a little bit of speed to rotate in there. But I think we can go right to Seattle, actually, because Boye Mafe was left, and he makes so much sense as the developmental young piece behind that group. He's the speed rusher. If you want to slide Cam Jordan inside, if you want to slide Autry inside, you can get Boye Mafe some rotational reps. So that makes a ton of sense with him in there. So the D-line's looking good. We knew we wanted to address them early. Then, are we ready to visit Buffalo? I don't think we are, because our corner conversation is still pretty tough. So Denver, some decent offensive line options, but I think we're good on the O-line. You could go Darby. You could go KJ Hamler. I think we wait there. Because the corners, we have not really addressed this yet. I do think, let's get a corner on the team. Sean Murphy-Bunting, unable to be kept by the Bucs. Love Sean Murphy-Bunting. He'll be our number one corner. So let's plug him in so we just know that we have a guy. He could have been listed with the Stars. The Raiders, Dylan Parham, Denzel Perriman. Let's just wait on that. I like the idea of Dylan Parham as a developmental center behind Rodney Hudson to be the replacement there. Same could be said about maybe taking Cam Jurgens from Philadelphia, but there's some options there. Avonte Maddox in the slot, James Bradbury, Milton Williams would be such a fun, athletic defensive tackle to develop behind these athletes we have. This Niners team with this Niners staff with this philosophy, I think, would love to build through the trenches and get a guy like Milton Williams in there, the athleticism there. We do have Matabuike. We got BJ Hill. I think we wait and revisit this. Because Reddick's there. Really talented player. I really like Milton Williams, but let's wait. Let's wait on that Eagles pick. All right. Dallas. Man. I think you just go with one of these corners, right? We got our safeties. We got our O-line. I don't want to rely on Leighton Vander Esch staying healthy. I think we take Jordan Lewis. I think he's the better of these two guys. Let's get another corner in here. He's not a de facto starter, but he can play slot or outside for us. Let's put him in the slot for now. What other teams were like really bad that we can just knock out? The Bears with Tyquan Graham. He's like literally the only option. So we'll take him. It's that bad. I don't even think he's a de facto starter. But we have some options in the slot there. So I think that clears up the slot corner position between those two guys. Washington. I like Diami Brown so much, but I'm going to hold off there. We got to fill in Mariota here for Atlanta. Okay, Carolina. We're not going with either of these linemen. So are we going Marshall or Yetur Gross-Matos? I like the idea of Yetur Gross-Matos as another developmental edge there. Marshall would be a nice developmental piece as well. So I lean Matos, but that's not a super easy call. I do think with San Fran, let's get our other starting corner here in Emmanuel Mosley. So let's confirm that one. We'll put in Emmanuel Mosley. So the secondary is like probably going to be our biggest need. It's not terrible though. We got starters. The Rams, I think you just go Ashawn. I think you just take Ashawn Robinson. I don't love these other players. He can do exactly what he is for the Rams for us. Rotational, depth, good run defender. we're going to have a really good depth, good deep defensive line. So we'll fill in Ashawn Robinson there. We're filling out nicely, you guys. We're filling out nicely. All right, let's get the best players we can before filling out the tough calls. I think at this point we go Matt Milano. It's a little bit of a small linebacker room with Devin Bush and Matt Milano, but Gabe Davis is pretty redundant with the receivers we ended up taking. We have our slot. I like Teron Johnson, but we've got our slot. I think we take Matt Milano off the Bills. So let's do that. And then I think with Green Bay, they have some really good players we can pick from. So who did I jot down for Minnesota? I had Ezra Cleveland jotted down. I don't know about that. That's a tough one. That's a tough one for Minnesota. But let's revisit them. For the Packers, I think this is where we get our running back. Let's get A.J. Dillon, man. I don't think we need Quay Walker with the linebackers we have. You could take Jordan Love and have him as a future, but I think we'll end up drafting a quarterback most likely and not roll the dice on Love. And between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, Devontae Wyatt does become available here. It's tempting, but I think let's take a running back from Green Bay here in A.J. Dillon, who's going to be a bruiser. We're a gap power run game. He can definitely do that. So he'll be fun. So our openings right now are specialists, which I don't think we'll end up taking any. Slot wide receiver. And that's really it. I mean, that's the meat and bones of the team. We got a few teams left to pick from, though, where we can get some developmental pieces. We can get some depth. So, man, I think I am gonna go. Let's just pick a team and figure it out. Denver. I think we take KJ Hamler as our slot receiver. He can be our gadget guy, provides something our other receivers don't do. We've already got some bigger bodied guys. So we're going to take KJ Hamler off the Broncos. So Hamler, welcome to the team. We've got the Eagles we haven't made a final call on. The Panthers, Terrace Marshall, Yetur Gross-Matos. All right. I think with Washington, I really want Diami Brown. I just think he hasn't gotten the opportunity yet. He'll have a chance to develop here. He'll get some rotational opportunities and can learn kind of the different skill sets between Corey Davis and Kenny Galladay's role. So he'll be a developmental piece from Washington, which I think answers what we want to do with Carolina's pick, and we'll take another developmental athletic guy for this D-line in Yetur Gross-Matos. Big dude, still young, really athletic. So the D-line definitely going to be a point of emphasis here. Not a huge surprise with who we went with as our defensive coaching staff. Then we have to decide on Houston, Philly, and Las Vegas. So we don't really have any developmental offensive linemen yet. I think we'll make that Dylan Parham to learn behind Rodney Hudson. Can be a backup guard. But I love his athleticism. I love the idea of him getting mentored by Rodney Hudson. So we'll go that route. And then Houston, like, I guess we just take Steven Nelson for cornerback depth. You could get another edge rusher in there and Jerry Hughes, but I think we got enough pieces there. We could go with a developmental linebacker. Yeah, screw it. Let's take Christian Harris. Why not? We're going to have a really small linebacker group, but he can play weak side backer as well in our base 4-3 packages. So we'll have a lot of speed. We'll have a lot of speed. So we're getting him. And then Philly. We could go James Bradbury, Reddick. This is really, you can get a good player off this team. We could go Cam Jurgens, get another good old lineman in there. Milton Williams, get some athleticism for this defensive line. Oh, we haven't picked Minnesota yet either, have we? Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take Ezra Cleveland from Minnesota. I think he's got talent. He's in a spot where he can either be a tackle or a guard. We're going to have him at guard, but he's a swing tackle. We've got flexibility there. Both our left guards can play tackle if we need them. And he'll continue to grow. So we don't need another offensive lineman. Let's write in Christian Harris here. And for Philly, I'm between Reddick and Milton Williams. I think I go Milton Williams in that conversation. I like Reddick, but we got two starters. We got Mafe and Gross Matos. Our scheme is much more about pocket pushers than it is getting that speed off the edge. So I think I will wrap this up. I don't really want Fletcher Cox. I think we have enough talent. I think our corners are good enough that we don't need James Bradbury. We could go Maddox. And would that change either of these picks? I think it would. I think I might turn this around, actually, you guys. I think I might actually take Jaron Kearse as a third safety. I think I'm going to take Avonte Maddox here off of Philly. And I'm going to take... where was my thought process going there? So we're going Maddox. And so no Jordan Lewis. We're going to have Jaron Kearse as a hybrid, big safety, just do it all, D-back. And with a little bit more certainty at slot corner, do we want to take another look at the Bears roster? Is there anything with the Bears that we want to change here? We could take a kicker from him, Cairo Santos, good player. We could take Cole Kmet. Did we protect Cole Kmet? I think we did, right? We did not protect Cole Kmet. The tight ends we have are small. Kmet would give us a real blocking. He's not a great blocker, but he at least has size. I think I'm going to flip that. Let's just take Cole Kmet as a third tight end. We're going to ditch, but then we have no corner depth. All right. Last change here. I don't need Christian Harris. Or I could just risk it for the biscuit. Okay, nope. I'm sticking with... all over the place here. I'm sticking with Jordan Lewis to have some corner depth. Tyquan Graham is just like, he's not really proven it all. So we're going to take Cole Kmet. Stick with Jordan Lewis. We don't need that backup safety. So we're going to have Cole Kmet. We're going to have 3 tight ends. And we're going to have Jordan Lewis here, who's a good dime back because he can play inside and out. And then that's all she wrote. That's the squad. Right? We didn't miss any picks. That's it. So there she is. And so we have our team. I just want to preview it in Madden format just to tease one more time that you can follow this team now in rebuild format on my gaming channel. That is TFG Plays. Don't know how long we're going to go, but it's going to be an epic series. Cannot wait. But this is a great just way to preview what the team's going to look like. Just ignore the Carolina Panthers logo. Those are some logistical humps that we're going to have to get through so we can make this possible on Madden. I'll talk about that when we get into that part of the series. But at quarterback, we got Marcus Mariota picking up Kurt Benkert. Only fitting if we're doing a Madden rebuild. We pick up one of the best Madden playing NFL players out there as a backup. Happen to like him too, but there's the quarterback room. A.J. Dillon is really the lead back with the running backs. He's the only guy we took, so we're going to have a theme here, picking up a lot of Texas guys because we are in Texas. Teams or players looking to stay in state, getting opportunities. So Malcolm Brown out of Texas, staying south with Alex Collins as well. But going to be A.J. Dillon's backfield for sure. Fullback, we pick up Mason Stoke out of Wisconsin. Wide receiver, Kenny Golladay, Corey Davis, KJ Hamler with Diami Brown in development. Definitely a fun group. You got your veteran guys who get a new opportunity, get out of New York, and, it just has not worked out for either of these guys as big free agent signings, but hoping things are better here and hoping KJ Hamler and Diami Brown can develop. But a fun-looking wide receiver room for sure. A sweet-looking tight end group. Mike Gesicki, who's going to be a glorified slot receiver for us, but he's going to be one of our better playmakers, one of the better teams we were able to get in this situation from Miami, who just didn't like his blocking because he's no good at that, but we'll definitely get him involved in a variety of ways. He'll be this offense's Darren Waller in a lot of ways. Jonnu Smith will be a good wing tight end, and Cole Kmet, our wide tight end. We got a really fun tight end room here. Excited for these guys. And then on the O-line, we got Orlando Brown at left tackle. We got Matt Filer and Ezra Cleveland at left guard. Rodney Hudson, Jonah Jackson at right guard, and Jawan Taylor at right tackle. So it should be a pretty solid offensive line. I think we'll have a league average O-line, which is, pretty good for starters. And some of these guys will develop. We got Jonah Jackson. We're getting into Madden territory now, but star development should grow. Ezra Cleveland should grow as well. And Dylan Parham as the backup center. Star development in a situation to be groomed by the veteran Rodney Hudson. So, yeah, pretty good setup with the O-line, I think. Shouldn't be a problem for this team. The D-line, ton of depth, ton of different pieces to move around. Excited to kind of get these guys in different spots. But Cam Jordan, our best player, is 33 years old, but our difference maker on the defense. Hope he's got another good year in him. Danico Autry is going to be moved around a ton, going to play some rush defensive tackle for us. Etor Gross-Matos, Boye Mafe, more in development there as our rotational speed rushers. Defensive line, a lot of big guys, more run defenders, BJ Hill, Ashawn Robinson, and Justin Matabuike, who we hope can continue to ascend and be more of a star defensive tackle down the road. But all those guys will play significant snaps. We were also able to stay the Texas route and find Malcolm Brown off the free agent block. Really small but athletic linebacking group. We're going to have one of the fastest linebacking tandems in the league, where Devin Bush can absolutely run. Matt Milano, a really good mover in space, not the best long speed, but then Christian Harris as well, who will earn some snaps through base 4-3 packages and certainly make an impact on special teams for us while he develops. But love the linebacker group. The corner room is where we're going to have some question marks, I think. It's not a bad group. I think Sean Murphy-Bunting will earn a contract extension for us if he has a good year, but he is in the last year of his contract. Avonte Maddox should be good to go in the slot. We're inheriting his contract from Philadelphia. And Emmanuel Mosley's in the last year of his contract as well. So Jordan Lewis, a dime corner. I think this is a spot come draft where we might want to add some more talent, some more youth, and upside there. At safety, it will be Julian Blackmon and it will be John Johnson. Good split safety duo there. And that's going to be this Houston Oilers team. Cannot freaking wait for this rebuild. Can't wait to just share this episode. Even if you aren't interested in the Madden side of this, which is going to be a ton of fun, I just hope you enjoyed this concept, and thank you for joining me on this ride. Another shout out to the NFL Stock Exchange guys for coming up with this concept, and I had a ton of fun putting this together. Going to continue having a ton of fun playing with this squad in the video game, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please do hit that like button, give the channel a follow if you haven't already, and we'll see you soon for more NFL content. Peace out.